Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to unpack one of the most pointed and honestly kind of strange verses in the entire book of Revelation. We're talking about a verse where Jesus actually commends a church for, well, for hating something. Yeah, you heard that right. So let's look at the verse itself. This is a direct message from Jesus to the church in Ephesus. And, he finds something to praise them for. But it's such a strange compliment, isn't it? He's literally commending them for hating something. And that just immediately makes you wonder, what on earth could be so bad that hating it is actually a good thing in God's eyes? And what's so powerful about this is that it shows Jesus sees and affirms what's right in his church, even when he's about to correct them for what's wrong. I mean, these guys had lost their first love, but he doesn't lead with that. He starts with praise. So that brings us to the big question, right? What exactly were these deeds that both Jesus and this church hated so strongly? Okay, so to solve this mystery, we've got to do a little linguistic detective work. The key, you'll see, is hidden in a few specific words from the original Greek text. So let's break it down. But this thou hast. The Greek word here is eches. Now, it might seem like a small word, but trust me, it is packed with meaning. So what this tells us is that this isn't just about some good deed they did, last Tuesday. Ekis means it's something they actively possess right now. It's a quality they hold as a present reality. It's a core part of who they were at that very moment. Okay, now for the next word. And this is the big one, hatest. The Greek word is mises. And honestly, its definition is the key that unlocks this entire verse. Now, when we hear hate, we think of this out-of-control emotional rage, right? But that's not what mises means at all. This is a deliberate, principled rejection. It's about completely renouncing your allegiance to something because it breaks a sacred covenant. It is a firm moral and spiritual stand. So what were they taking this principled stand against? Well, the verse says they hate the deeds. In the original Greek, that's ta erga. And again, this is super specific. We're not just talking about a bad idea or some flawed belief system. Ta erga refers to a whole system of practices, actions that actually produce a certain kind of fruit. This wasn't just a philosophy they disagreed with. It was something tangible, something active. Okay, so let's recap. We've defined the action. It's a principled rejection of an entire system of practices. Now, for the final clue that's going to tie this whole thing together, just who were the Nicolaitans? So who were these guys? Well, funny enough, the name itself is the biggest clue we've got. You see, unlike a lot of other groups from that time, the Nicolaitans aren't really clearly defined anywhere else in history. And that suggests the name itself isn't just a label, it's a description of what they did. And when we break down the Greek name Nicolaiton, boom, there's our answer. It comes from two words, Nikao, which means to conquer, and Laos, which means the people. So they were, quite literally, the conquerors of the people. So, you see, the deeds of the Nicolaitans wasn't about some specific group with a secret handshake and a membership card. It was a spirit, a pattern of behavior. It was all about creating a spiritual hierarchy, abusing authority, and trying to dominate and control believers. And that is the exact opposite of the kind of servant leadership that Jesus came to establish. And you know what? This idea of rejecting spiritual abuse, it's not some one-off thing in the Bible. It is a really consistent theme that we see again and again. Let's just take a quick look at how this pattern shows up across Scripture. I mean, go back centuries earlier. The prophet Ezekiel just lays into these leaders who were supposed to be shepherds, but were instead using their flock for personal gain. They were eating the fat, enriching themselves, instead of feeding and protecting the very people they were supposed to serve. And then, of course, Jesus himself. He directly confronted the religious leaders of his day for this exact same behavior. He called them out for piling these impossible spiritual burdens on people, all while abusing their own authority and not lifting a finger to help. And there's even another layer to this. The book of Jude warns about people who twist the amazing concept of God's grace into a license to sin. And that was part of the whole Nicolaitan system too, corrupting the core message of freedom and turning it into an excuse for indulgence and, you guessed it, control. So, okay, we've decoded the verse, we've identified the behavior, we've seen the pattern throughout Scripture, but what does this actually mean for us today? What's the core lesson here? Well, the message is really powerful. It's that having the discernment to recognize and reject what is false, these systems of control, the abuse of authority, twisting the idea of grace, that's not just a good idea, it's a vital sign of spiritual life. It actually aligns our hearts with the heart of Jesus. But it's not the whole story. The ultimate goal is balance. It's kind of like a tightrope, really. The church back then was walking it, and we are still walking it today. Discernment is absolutely essential, but it isn't the only thing. Because remember, even though Jesus praised the Ephesians for their amazing discernment, what was the main thing he had to correct them on? That they had left their first love. So the ultimate lesson here is that truth and love, discernment and intimacy, they have to go hand in hand. One without the other is just incomplete. So the big takeaway is this. Yes, we are absolutely called to stand firmly for what is true and reject what is false. We are called to hate the systems that conquer and control people. But, and this is a huge but, we have to do that without losing our passionate, loving devotion to God and to other people. And that leaves us with a final and honestly pretty challenging thought to carry with us. Hating the deeds is not the same thing as hating the people. So the real question for all of us becomes, how do we learn to reject these false systems of control while at the exact same time we're still loving the people who are caught up inside them? That is the real balance of truth and love.